Video title, WW3. Simulation, what would really happen if World War III started 4:16 a.m. The radar screen blooms with a second blip over the Baltic. It should not exist. A technician swallows hard as the track multiplies, then splits again, like cells dividing. Outside the operations center, the air is still, but the building suddenly feels too small. The first siren does not sound like a warning. It sounds like an argument with the sky. Phones light up across sleeping neighborhoods, but the notifications do not load. The signal bars hang, frozen, like a lie that refuses to collapse. Somewhere in the dark, a child wakes up and listens. A distant thump rolls through the city. Not loud, just wrong. It is the sound of pressure changing its mind. The streetlights flicker once, twice, then settle into a sickly, steady glow. In that moment, people sense something before they understand it. As the world holds its breath, everyone looks for a simple headline to cling to. None arrives. The silence between alerts becomes the first weapon. In that instant, the old world does not end with fire. It ends with uncertainty. Inside hardened rooms, protocols begin moving faster than human thought. Authentication codes are checked, then checked again, because mistakes now become national funerals. A red phone rings, and no one wants to be the one who answers. The chain of command tightens like a noose. On a coastal highway, a truck driver sees military convoys moving without headlights. The vehicles slide by like armored ghosts, and the driver feels suddenly civilian, suddenly irrelevant. He reaches for the radio and hears only static, a hiss like the ocean breathing. He keeps driving anyway because stopping feels worse. Phase I begins with the trigger, but the public does not see the trigger. They see symptoms. A banking app fails. A weather forecast disappears. A municipal website goes blank, replaced by a maintenance page that never updates. People blame servers, then hackers, then each other. The catalyst is layered, designed to feel like coincidence. A synchronized cyber strike hits grid control nodes, and the monitoring dashboards freeze mid-graph. Operators stare at screens that insist everything is normal while alarms scream in the room. The system becomes a puppet with its strings cut. At the same time, an electromagnetic pulse detonates high above a critical corridor. It is not a mushroom cloud. It is a silent flash that steals electrons like oxygen. Cars do not explode. They simply become heavy, useless furniture in the lanes. Military channels fill with clipped phrases and incomplete confirmations. Possible hypersonic. Unverified launch origin. Satellite feed degraded. Each line is a fragment, and fragments do not comfort anyone. Every commander now fights the same enemy, not knowing what. The public watches anchors on television smile too long, waiting for the earpiece to tell them what to say. The studio lights remain bright, but the confidence drains from every sentence. Social media becomes a riot of speculation, then a graveyard of refresh errors. Information at this moment is poison disguised as clarity. In the capital, emergency councils convene under fluorescent lights that make everyone look sick. Advisors argue about thresholds and intent, about whether this is a precursor or the main strike. Every option is bad, and the least bad one still kills people. The clock does not care about politics. A status level changes, and the change travels like a shock through the bureaucracy. People who have never held a rifle suddenly matter because they hold passwords. A clerk mistypes a character and feels their heart stop. Somewhere, an officer whispers a prayer into a microphone. The first public statement is deliberately vague, because vagueness buys time. Nationwide disruption, remain calm, await further instructions. The words are sterile, and the sterile tone makes them terrifying. Calm is what you ask for when you cannot promise safety. Denial spreads faster than panic, because denial is comfortable. People insist it is a drill, a glitch, a political stunt. They keep pouring coffee, keep tying shoes, keep making lunches for a day that is already gone. The brain protects itself with routine until routine breaks. Then the second shock hits. and routine finally fractures. GPS timing drifts, and networks lose their shared heartbeat. Cell towers overload under the weight of millions asking the same question at once. The calls do not go through, and that failure becomes its own scream. Phase 2 begins when systems stop being invisible. ATMs freeze with cash trapped behind plastic and steel. Gas pumps lock, their screens flashing error codes like bad jokes. Digital door locks in some buildings fail open, in others fail shut, trapping people on the wrong side. In supermarkets, the first wave is not hunger. It is fear with shopping carts. Shelves are not emptied by shortages. They are emptied by imagination. People buy water because they cannot buy certainty, and water is the closest substitute. A pharmacist stands behind a counter and watches customers' hands shake as they demand refills. The computer system will not verify prescriptions, and policy collapses under desperation. The pharmacist becomes a judge without training, deciding who gets insulin and who gets nothing. Every choice leaves a bruise. Traffic lights begin blinking red, then go dark entirely. Intersections become negotiations, then battlegrounds. Horns blare, then stop, because fuel is suddenly precious and rage is exhausting. A man steps out of his car and looks at the skyline like it might explain. Emergency services respond, but the response is uneven and human. Dispatch lines jam with calls about fainting, looting, fires, and something in the sky. Ambulances take longer, then stop coming altogether in some districts. The myth of quick rescue dies early. In the first 12 hours, the grid becomes a patchwork quilt of failure. Some neighborhoods still glow, others sink into black. Those with power become islands of envy, and envy becomes dangerous. Darkness is not just absence of light, it is absence of rules. The first confirmed strike is not where people expect it. It hits a node, not a city center. A hardened communications hub goes silent, and with it, a region's coordination collapses. The target is not population, it is function. On military bases, aircraft scramble with ordnance that looks too clean. Pilots climb into cockpits with training in their bones and dread in their throats. They do not talk about politics, they talk about headings, fuel loads, and return windows. Everyone pretends there will be return windows. The oceans do not protect anyone now. Missile trajectories ignore geography, and cyber payloads ignore borders. The idea of distance as safety evaporates like breath in winter air. People realize the map in their head is obsolete. A national address is prepared, but transmission is uncertain. Backup studios activate, and hardened satellite uplinks are tested. The president's words are written to be remembered, but the microphones might not carry them. History depends on fragile cables. When the speech finally airs, it reaches only part of the country. In living rooms with power, faces glow blue from screens as the message lands. In dark homes, people hear about it later through rumor and shortwave. A nation splits into those who know and those who guess. Phase 2 deepens when water pressure drops. Pumps rely on electricity, and backup generators have limits. Faucets cough air, then spit brown water, then fall silent. A single drop becomes a decision. Hospitals shift into emergency power, and the hum of generators becomes the soundtrack of triage. Non-critical patients are sent home into chaos because beds become strategic assets. Elevator systems fail, and staff carry supplies upstairs like it is 1890. Modern medicine suddenly feels ancient. In one ward, a nurse tapes handwritten notes to doors because printers are dead. The handwriting is neat, almost polite, and the politeness feels obscene. Outside, the emergency bay fills with injuries from car crashes and fights. War arrives through civilians first. The first organized looting begins in places where trust was already thin. It is not cinematic. It is quick hands and broken glass and people refusing to make eye contact. A man steals diapers and cries while running, because shame is still alive. Police forces try to hold lines, but their radios crackle and fail. Officers drive through neighborhoods with no clear orders, only instincts and exhaustion. Some stay disciplined, some quit. The badge is not a shield against fear. Rationing starts informally before it becomes official. Gas stations stop selling by price and start selling by favoritism. Generators become treasure. Extension cords become currency. In apartments, neighbors who never spoke now knock on doors, asking for candles. Meanwhile, in secure rooms, alliances grind into motion. Emergency meetings happen through encrypted channels and fallback frequencies. Article language is invoked, argued, interpreted, and weaponized. Words become as heavy as missiles. A retaliatory strike is debated in minutes, because minutes are now expensive. The goal is deterrence, but deterrence requires clarity, and clarity is dying. One side signals restraint, the other reads weakness. Misreading is the oldest cause of war. The next wave comes as precision hits on infrastructure corridors. Bridges do not vanish, but key spans buckle. Rail hubs become craters or simply go offline, their signaling systems fried. Supply chains snap, and the snap echoes across every kitchen. People begin to move, because staying feels like waiting to be chosen by fate. Highways clog with vehicles packed with blankets, bottled water, and pets. Some cars die mid-lane from electronic failure, becoming concrete obstacles. The migration becomes a slow-motion trap. In the crush of traffic, tempers flare, then collapse into numbness. Families sit in cars with windows cracked, listening to distant sirens fade. A child asks if school is canceled, and no one answers. The parents realize they cannot promise a calendar anymore. The air carries a new smell in some places, sharp and metallic. It is not always radiation, but everyone thinks it is. Masks appear, improvised from cloth and fear. People begin treating air like a hostile substance. Phase 3 begins when the first 72 hours solidify into patterns. Those who prepared stop explaining themselves, because explanations invite resentment. Those who did not prepare become louder, because loudness is their remaining tool. Society fractures along lines that used to be invisible. In a basement, a family counts canned food with a flashlight. The labels look strange in the dim light, like artifacts from a lost civilization. The father sets rules. 1 can per person per day, no exceptions. The mother nods, and the nod contains grief. Above ground, groups form around resources. A building with a working generator becomes a fortress. A neighborhood with a well becomes a bargaining chip. People start posting handwritten signs. No water, trade only, keep out. Civilization compresses into blunt messages. The invisible threat becomes the main character now. Fallout is not dramatic. It is dust that settles like ordinary dirt. People wipe it off windowsills and do not realize they are touching consequences. Geiger counters become prophetic devices, and most households do not have one. Official guidance, when it arrives, is inconsistent. One agency says shelter in place for 48 hours. Another hints at evacuation corridors. Local governments contradict national statements because their data feeds are broken. Confusion becomes the enemy's multiplier. Shortwave radio returns like a ghost of the past. Voices crackle through static, exchanging coordinates, warnings, and rumors. Some broadcasts are calm, others are predatory. Every sentence carries the weight of, "I might be lying." In a command bunker, analysts watch satellite images with gaps like missing teeth. Clouds of smoke smear across industrial zones. Runway lights blink at some airfields, dead at others. The map becomes less a map and more a wound. Military movements intensify, but the public sees only fragments. Troops occupy intersections. Helicopters thump overhead, low and aggressive. Checkpoints appear with sandbags and nervous hands on triggers. The uniform becomes both reassurance and threat. Internationally, the world splits into blocks in real time. Some states declare neutrality and close borders. Others offer support that looks like opportunism. Diplomacy turns into a high-speed poker game with nuclear chips. Every handshake hides a blade. Cyber operations continue, because cyber never runs out of ammunition. Fake emergency alerts hit phones when networks briefly recover, sending people into stampedes. Deep-faked leaders appear on hacked feeds, declaring surrender or escalation. Reality becomes a contested territory. Food logistics degrade into local scavenging. Big warehouses exist, but distribution fails without fuel and coordination. Refrigeration dies, and tons of food rot, while neighborhoods starve. People learn the cruel joke of abundance without access. Medical systems begin triage based on survivability, not need. Antibiotics become rare, then priceless. Simple cuts become serious infections. Chronic illness becomes a slow execution. The war kills quietly through infrastructure. By day 7, curfews appear in official language, then in armed enforcement. Streets empty earlier each night, not from obedience but from caution. In the dark you hear distant shouting, then silence. Silence becomes the most reliable report. Some communities harden into cooperation, others into predation. In one suburb, neighbors rotate watch shifts and share water. In another, a gang controls the only working generator and charges for phone charging. The same crisis, two different outcomes. The geopolitical picture outside the local chaos remains brutal. Retaliatory strikes land on command nodes, air defenses, and port facilities. Each strike is limited. Each one risks becoming misinterpreted. A limited war is a myth that leaders repeat to sleep at night. Nuclear forces posture without necessarily launching, but posture is enough to terrify. Submarines shift patrol boxes, bombers run airborne alerts, and missile crews sit beneath fluorescent lights for days. Human beings become biological components in machine logic. In cities, people start painting windows with makeshift shielding. They stack books, furniture, and bags of soil against basement walls. Some choices help, others are superstition. In crisis, superstition feels like control. The first winter of this new normal is not winter on a calendar. It is winter in behavior. People stop trusting institutions that cannot deliver basics. They stop trusting neighbors who might steal. They start trusting small circles, and small circles build walls. Resolution comes not as a single ending, but as a settling. After the first month, the tempo changes. The initial screams fade into a constant grind of survival. The war becomes background noise, like distant thunder that never stops. In the aftermath, the largest casualty is the illusion of modern life. People once assumed water would come from walls and food from shelves. They assumed lights would obey switches, and that help would arrive with sirens. Now, every assumption costs. The lingering truth is not that humans are fragile. It is that systems are fragile. A nation is not just flags and speeches. It is pumps, routers, transformers, and trust. When those fail, the nation becomes a collection of scared bodies. The moral is simple and cruel. Safety is electricity plus cooperation, and both can vanish overnight. Preparedness is not paranoia. It is respect for physics and human panic. The line between normal and collapse is thinner than anyone wants to admit. Some rebuild, because humans always rebuild. But rebuilding does not restore innocence. Every repaired streetlight becomes a reminder of darkness. Every stocked shelf becomes a reminder of empty hands. In the end, World War III does not feel like history books. It feels like waiting in a dark hallway, listening to your city breathe differently. It feels like the moment you realize your survival depends on choices made before you knew you needed them. And the haunting fact remains. The world does not collapse with a bang, but with a quiet, unstoppable series of failures.